Good morning. The movie that I chose to watch was The Dead Poets Society. I'd never seen The Dead Poets Society before. My dad really loves it, so he was like, you have to watch it. It's so good. So I was like, okay, like it's on the list. That's what I'm gonna watch. And I really liked it. At first, I think I was in love with the movie. I was really blown away by it because Mr. Keating's teaching style really stood out to me. I thought it was so cool how he gave his students such creative freedom in the classroom and just let them run with their ideas. One of the first scenes of the movie when he gets into the classroom and the first thing that he tells the kids to do is rip out the first couple pages of the textbook. I think I was as taken aback as the students inside the movie. I was like, why would he do that? And then I was like, oh wow, that's so cool that he's not making them think inside the box. He's really making them think outside the box in the classroom and getting them to really be inspired by poetry. And in the beginning of the movie, I really admired it. And then I started to think to myself that, this is his ideas and his logistics, but they're starting to kind of cloud the way that he teaches. So I think that was the one thing that was the one deception of teaching in the movie that I wasn't really a fan of, because you have to give your students freedom, definitely freedom inside the classroom, but there's a line that you cross. And I think that his opinions clouded so much. He inspired the guys to do the Dead Poets Society, to create the Dead Poets Society, and really get into poetry, which is really exciting that they were starting to get passionate about what he was teaching inside of the classroom. But at the same time, with poetry and with English, there is history behind it that you have to learn to yourself. You can't just speak freely and open freely about everything. You have to actually dissect the poetry and the grammatical things. And I was thinking to myself oh, I would really want Mr. Keating as a teacher, but at the same time I want to learn the history of the poems and I want to be able to dissect the poem line by line. And I don't think he really did that. I think that he just looked at poem optimistically and viewed it your own way, basically. So I think that if me as a teacher, I always wanted to give my kids freedom and let them run with their thoughts. But this definitely changed my perspective of that, because there comes a line where you have to be a teacher. But at the same time, I want to be understanding with my kids, and I always just want to see my kids grow inside the classroom. I think that that's so important, to just watch your kids flourish and give them the tools to do that. I think one of my teachers said to me, they were teachers aren't out to get you. They're not going to be your friend. They're not going to hold your hand, but they want to see you grow. They want to see you flourish. They want to see you be successful. They want to see you get A's in their classroom. So they're not going to be out to get you and be I don't like this kid. I want this kid to get an F. I would never think that way. I want my kids to grow inside my classroom. I want my kids to learn. I want my kids to flourish, but I can't hold their hands in doing so. And I think at some point in the movie, it almost was Mr. Keating was holding their hands and guiding them, which I think that he needed to give them the space to grow on their own instead of just being so on top of the kids. But as I rewatched Azul's TED Talk, and I was thinking to myself, as he said, what makes a good teacher great? One of the things that stood most out to me was when he was telling the story about Irene, the one girl he had as a teacher who wasn't handing in his homework. He said, great teachers need to know that kids have a life outside of the classroom. And I think being fresh out of high school, I really thought about this hard, and it's so true. For example, Neil, one of the main characters in the movie, the one who commits suicide, reminds me a lot of one of my best friends, Ryan, because in the movie, Neil is head of the squad, all of the boys follow him. That was the way that my best friend Ryan is. He was always Mr. Popular in high school, got asked to work every event. All of the guys followed him, all of the girls wanted to be with him, all the guys wanted to be him. And this year, his dad got diagnosed with cancer, and he just started to get depressed and wasn't handing in his work. He wasn't being himself. He wasn't cracking the jokes as usual. But not many people knew what was going on in his life outside. And I think the teachers noticed that he was not handing in his work, obviously was not being himself. But at least 3 of the teachers still gave him a really hard time about all of this. And they were really on top of him about not doing his work. They were not understanding at all, even though his dad was dying. And I was thinking to myself that when I'm a teacher, I need to understand what's happening in my students' lives. I'm not going to push them. I'm not going to try to crack them open. But I want my kids to know that if there's anything that's ever going on inside of their lives, or like if they ever need someone just to talk to, I'm always there to listen. If they ever need help, I'll always be there to just help them. I don't want to be out to get any of my students. So I think that's the most important thing about what makes a good teacher great, is that they really have to like understand each student individually. They can't just like look at the classroom broadly and say, these are my students, and go on with life. Like they have to actually like individually like witness what's going on inside their classroom. Like you have to like notice your students' behaviors, because not every student's going to go up to you and tell them that tell you that they're having a bad day. Like not every student's like that. But I feel like you just need to have a hunch. Like you need to know your students well and realize some of my best teachers, like when I was having a bad day and I didn't say anything, they would come up to me and they'd be like, you look like you're having a bad day. Take a breather today. And I just want to be that kind of teacher. Like I obviously know that teaching and learning is first. That's always the most important. But I want my kids to know that I'm never out to get them. So I think that also Mr. Keating was that way with Neil, because he was so inspiring to him about like his acting and like was really pushing him to do that. And then obviously Neil's dad wasn't agreeing. But at the same time, I like want to push my kids and I want them to be passionate about what they're doing in their own lives.